Hello, I'm going to talk about international agreements for the unification of certain rules of bills of lading and maritime transport of goods, contract parts, transporter, owner of the ship or charter who is a part of a transport contract with a shipper, conveyor agent, and shipper. On the area of application could be any knowledge issued in one of the contracting states of the rules of the bid. Obligation of the parties. The obligation of the transporter are general. The navigability of the ship relating to the crewing and preparation of the ship's aerial and about shipper to the title law to be carried in case of not doing it must compensate the measure of the incurrency of the details of the lot. About exonerations, lack of reasonable diligence of their obligations. About inceptions are of works, acts of goods enforcement. Limits of responsibility. The carrier is not liable for loss or damage arising from the ship's lack of navigability unless a reasonable lack of diligence on his part is imputable. Inceptions from liable to fire acts of negligence of the captain and sailors, act of goods, act of wars, strange, riots, salvage, among others. Now, we are going to talk about claims and deadlines for bringing actions. This should be a writing complaint to the carrier who represented at the depot of discharge agent to recognize the loss or damage caused within 3 days to give the respective notice and 1 year to file a lawsuit.
Haya, Visby. Law of December 22nd of 1949 on the transport of goods by sea on a bill of lading. Its objective is to regulate the relations between elements interested in the transport of goods by sea and apply only to the contract of international transport. The contracting parts, which are the same as the beach, which are the conveyor agent, and the loader. The rules will apply to bills of lading extended in positions belonging to two different states when the knowledge awarded in a contracting state, the carriage takes place from the port of a contracting state, and the knowledge provides for the provisions of the rules or the legislation that makes them effective. Obligations of the parties do not include new obligations against the rules of the beach. Limits of responsibility. The carrier and ship are exempted from liability on the goods unless action is taken against them in the year following the date of delivery or that they should have been delivered to them. Exonerations and limitations apply to any action against the carrier on loss or damage to merchandise, whether for contractual or contractual liability. Complaints and deadlines to file actions allows the carrier to bring the right of action to repeat even after the expiration of the period. Allows arbitration. One of the parties must invoke it and will be directed in a period of 6 months.
Contracting parties, Hamburg rules. Carrier. Person who, in his own name or another, enters into a contract for the carry of goods with a shipper. Effective carrier. Person to whom the carrier has entrusted the execution of the carry of goods or a part of. Shipper. Who acting in his own name or someone else's has been entrusted with the obligation to effectively deliver the goods to a carrier. Consignee. Person entitled to receive the goods. Area of application. They will apply to all shipping contracts providing that port of loading or unloading provided in the contract of maritime carriage is situated in a contract state. One of the optional parts of unloading in the carriage contract is an effective port and is situated in a contracting state. Bill of lading or other document providing the contract of carriage by sea is issued in a contracting state and stipulates that the contract shall be governed by the agreement condition.
Express obligation for the carrier establish period for which it will be responsible. Port of landing, transportation, and port of discharge. Your responsibility starts from the moment you take the position in your custody and ends when you deliver them. Shall be liable for damage or loss of the goods, and its liability extends to acts and omission committed, be its employees, agents, or other acting on its behalf. The shipper, on the other hand, must ensure the safety of his position to the means of transportation and other goods transported. While the carrier has in his custody, the merchandise will be responsible for any damage or loss of recharge on it. The Hamburg rules limit the liability of the carrier for loss or damages of the goods to an equivalent amount of 835 units of account per package or other unit of charge transported or 2.5 units of account per kilogram of gross weight of good loss or damaged if this is greater. Warning of loss, damages, or delay 1 working day from when the goods were placed in its possession. Repeat action 15 days if joint inspection has been carried out between the parts. Delay in the delivery of the merchandise 60. Judicial and procedure 2 years.
The Rotterdam Convention is a multilateral treaty to promote shared responsibilities in relation to importation of hazardous chemicals. The convention promotes open exchange of information and calls on exporters of hazardous chemicals to use proper labeling, include directions on safe handling, and inform purchasers of any known restrictions or bans.
Contracting parts, carrier, executor part, person different to the carrier that executes or is committed to execute some obligations of the carrier expected in a transporting contract about the reception, the load, the manipulation, the transport, the care, the unloading, and delivery of the goods, in the way that the person acts directly or indirectly to the carrier or drops the supervision or control. Of applications are applicable about the contract or international transport of goods, even if they did or didn't advise about the boarding, totally or partially maritime. In that way, the Rotterdam Convention applies to the same multimodal transportation when the ship of the goods is made for at least 2 different ways. This method of transport has a huge practical application in the current days, with the use of the units of good and especially the container. Obligation of the parts, obligation of the carrier, the transport of the good till the place of destination and deliver them to the receiver. During the period of responsibility expected on this previous article, this is forced to receive the load, manipulate, transport, keep, watch and unloading the goods. Obligations of the loader about the carrier. The loader must deliver the goods prepared for the transportation, prepare them in a way that they can resist the transport, including the load operations, haul operations, unloading operations without any damage to the people or the goods. When a container was filled by the loader, this must hold and tie the goods in the container with diligence and the precautions of the case.
The liability limits of the carrier increased to units per package or other cargo unit transported or to 3 units per kilogram of weight of the loss or damaged merchandise, if this quantity were greater. The freighter responds for loss or damage caused to the carrier allows that the license proves that the loss or damage was caused by the carrier to comply with the obligation of the agreement. The deadline to claim by the freighter is 2 years.